really going back to how we can create a new food system that makes really good, clean food incredibly accessible and convenient for the way that we live, and do good at the same time by trying to reverse some of the damage that big food has done to our planet and our system and our health, is what I'm incredibly passionate about.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
We have Rachel Drori on the show today. She is the founder of Daily Harvest. She was gainfully employed and pregnant when she got the idea for Daily Harvest. And she says it all had to do with a why not now moment, and how she asked herself, why not now? Because the right time would never come. From the outside looking in, she had every reason not to start a company, but she did it anyway. Daily Harvest brings ready-to-blend smoothies, harvest bowls, soups, flatbreads directly to your door. Personally, I love the flatbreads. But these products are farm frozen. They help you enjoy your fruits and vegetables. And Daily Harvest takes care of the food so the food can take care of you. Rachel and her team have built this company to become a $250 million business, and they are profitable. She started from the trunk of her car while pregnant, and look at where her why not now idea took her. Rachel does have some venture partners, one of which is M13, led by Carter Ream, who has also been on this podcast. Definitely check out our conversation if you missed that. Oh, and I forgot to mention ice cream. Daily Harvest has ice cream as well. In this episode, Rachel talks through her philosophy on customer acquisition. I thought this was fascinating. As a marketer by trade, some would say this is a fairly counterintuitive approach, but it really resonated with me, and I've been thinking about it ever since our conversation. We also talk about delegating and how your role shifts as a leader, as a founder, and how it should shift on a regular basis and evolve as the company is evolving. And of course, I had to ask Rachel about investing. Having both raised money and also as an angel investor herself, she shares some of the things that she's looking for when she is investing in companies. So this all came down to a why not now idea. And Rachel asked herself, well, what if this doesn't work? And she answered that question and then said, then what? Answered that, then what? Then what? Which is Renegade Rule number 1 to begin with. When we identify the worst case scenario, we are able to put fear in the back seat and logic in the driver's seat. Oftentimes, the worst case scenario isn't actually that bad. You never know where a why not now idea will take you if you take action on it. Rachel, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I'm excited to have you on. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, let's hop in. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Yeah. So, the big one is starting Daily Harvest. I was working at Gilt Group at the time. I had all the reasons not to start a business. I was gainfully employed. a lot of things were starting to work. And what I realized was that there was never going to be a good time. And I kept on trying to convince myself that it wasn't. And then I started shifting my mindset to, well, why not now? Actually, right? Like, okay. And I kept playing it forward. Like, what is my life going to look like in 2 years? What is my life going to look like in 4 years? What is my life going to look like 6 years? I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I happened to have had an idea. And I was like, I would be crazy not to dive in head first. And one of the things that I always do is I think about what is the worst case scenario? What is the absolute worst thing that can happen? And that's like a little mental game I play to get me to take those big jumps or big swings or, whatever you want to call it. And I did that and I played it through and I was like, okay, so worst case scenario, you fail. But like, what does it actually mean to fail?
Yeah. Then what?
Right? Like, okay. So I kept on playing it forward. I was like, okay, well, there will be money. I will be out because I was self-funding at the time. There is opportunity cost for not doing something different. But, if I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, if I knew that I had a really good idea, if I had all this uncertainty about what the future would look like my life was chaotic then, but I didn't know at the time, what would it be like to have kids or what would it be like to have all these other things that I wanted in life? I said, why not now? And the way that I was able to take that leap was really by being super disciplined about it. So what I did is I tried to set a metric that I could hold myself to prove to myself that objectively this was a good idea. And it was a really important part of me being able to take that leap. So what I was trying to avoid is I have a lot of really nice friends and I didn't want them urging me on like, good friends do into something that was maybe wasn't ever going to have product market fit. And, if I was going to dive in head first, the way I kind of wrapped my head around it after I had gone through that worst case scenario, exercise was really like, okay, so how do I make sure that I'm not fooling myself, that this is something that I'm going to quit my job for, that this is something that I'm going to dedicate my entire life to. And what I did is I was trying to avoid this thing where my friends or like my mom's friends thinking about Girl Scout cookies or selling wrapping paper in elementary school where your parents' friends would buy something because they felt bad for you and you really wanted the yo-yo, whatever it is. So what I said is once 5 times more people that I didn't know were buying Daily Harvest than those who I did know. Completely arbitrary, but to me, it felt like that's how I was going to make sure that the business had legs, that it was something that people actually wanted, not just something that I was going to have to continuously push upon people. And that's what gave me that final bit of courage to just jump in and get it done.
Oh, so interesting. Okay, so I have a few questions to follow up on that. First of all, the fact that you said you asked yourself the worst case scenario is music to my ears because I have 5 Renegade rules, and number 1 is figure out what's the worst case scenario, right? And when you went through this, then what then went okay, failure, whatever that means, out some money, self-funded. Did you play it through all the way to where you're like, well, I think I could probably go back and get the job I had, or I know I'm marketable and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to find another job.
Absolutely. And not only that, but the learnings from having tried and failed are more, in my opinion, we're going to be more than staying where I was and, trying to build something within the 4 walls that I was in.
Yeah. It's like getting your MBA to a certain extent because you have to pay for that anyway, right? So
absolutely. And honestly, I happen to have an MBA, but I learned a lot more in the first few months of starting Daily Harvest than I did throughout that entire 2 years.
That's very interesting. Good soundbite for those listening. I hope your ears perked up if you're considering. Not that it's true. It's just the answers are on the street, not necessarily a classroom, right?
And testing and learning and not being afraid to fail because you've already worked through the worst case scenario.
Right, which is insurance. You start to put logic in the driver's seat. So then you talked about being disciplined and having this metric you put in place to prove to yourself that this wasn't just a bunch of nice friends that were saying, yeah, we'll support you 5 times more than the people that you knew, right? That were buying. Was your kind of your proof, your validation? Did you find that threshold specifically one day where you're like, okay, this is it. I've passed my metric?
It's a funny story. So I happened to have been pregnant when I started Daily Harvest, which was another reason why I was like, wait, what am I doing? Like, this is probably the worst possible moment to be doing this, but I'm doing it because why not now? And I hit that number actually relatively quickly, but I'll never forget the moment I hit that number because I was locked in a freezer.
Oh my goodness.
Like, terrified that the child inside of me was going to freeze. And I'm looking at my phone, trying to call people to get me out of the freezer. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And I remember getting close to the number and being like, all right, we're nearing it. But the moment I hit that number, I was locked inside of a freezer.
There's got to be some meta, representation of what the universe was trying to tell you there.
It's not the only time that happened, by the way, but
which is good to know. It's a liability if you're going to be in this world and this specific industry, evidently. How did you this is just my mind wondering, how did you measure that? So how do you dive into that data and be like, I know these people, I don't know these people?
I mean, it was very unscientific, but sure. I had a list of everyone that I knew. And those are the people who I sent my first emails out to. And it was like, here's my story. This is what I'm building. This is why I'm building it. Tell your friends.
Okay.
So I would reference against that email list. Mm-hmm. And then I would just do the math.
I love it. Yep. That makes sense. I mean, that's fair enough. You can eyeball that. And, for listeners who are at that point right now too, where they're just hitting the ground every day, what a great goal to have, to where you feel like you can start getting some momentum, and it's not so much push. It's you're getting more of that demand. What a great feeling.
Yeah. I mean, look, and the number and the measure was kind of arbitrary, but it was solving for what my concern was, which was people really weren't going to like it. They were just going to be nice. And that was and for whatever reason, that was what I had come up with that gave me real conviction that this was something that people wanted. And, part of it was to make sure that it wasn't, my friends being nice, but there was also that piece where, as a marketer, I grew up through marketing. I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't paying for every customer, because I also don't think that that's a winning formula. And if you're creating something that people love, right? Like, as a marketer, if you saw our early branding, the early packaging, it was disgusting. I'm going to go ahead and say that. And when you're making food, that's rough. But I was really I knew I could make all of that amazing after, but I really focused on the food and the product, because that's ultimately what's going to solve a problem for people, and what people are going to talk about, or they're not. It's so much more than the pretty pictures and the pretty branding and the magical words and all of that stuff, which I was like, I can deal with that later, but I really want to make sure that I'm solving a problem. So to have something that looked so unappealing, solve that problem for so many people made it kind of a no-brainer.
What an interesting approach as a marketer too, because you could have easily gone the other direction of, I know I can.
And if I went down that rabbit hole, I don't think I would have come back.
Right. And your budget would look probably a lot different too. Very, very cool. So I actually remember, I think it was Chipotle, early days, they didn't allocate any money for marketing except for samples. That was their marketing. And they thought, if we can get people to test it,
speaks for itself.
There you go. So you did end up fundraising, right? And can you talk a little bit about what point you decided that was necessary? And then I have just some questions that, as a voice of authority in this area, that I'd love to see how you might answer, but in other scenarios.
Yeah. So fundraising was not something that I was excited to do. I had worked at a venture-backed startup, and, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. So it was something that I really wanted to avoid for as long as possible, because what I had learned early days before I even went out to raise capital was that people didn't understand what I was building for. They just didn't get it. I would get a lot of questions about like, but who is this for? Like, but how is it different from Jamba Juice? Or like, just all of these questions with people not being able to make the connection between what they saw in front of them and the big picture. So I knew that I also had to like prove objectively that there was product market fit and that the vision was possible. That's really the reason why I chose to bootstrap. But ultimately, once we had expanded to the tri-state area, I realized that I was holding us back by not having more capital to hire more folks and to really be able to go national. So that was the moment where I was like, okay, but I had proven out enough where it gave me the ability to really focus on finding investors that were value aligned, because that was incredibly important to me at the time. Still is very important to me. But it was the moment when I realized I was choking off growth by not having more funds. And, I've always believed in really capital efficient growth, which is different from a lot of folks. But it's something that I was disciplined on from day one, even though, I was never going to like throw fuel on the fire and like see how big the fire could get. It was incredibly helpful to have that money to be able to make really calculated investments to be able to scale the business nationally.
So can you talk a little bit about what you mean by capital efficient? So versus, well, first of all, were you profitable before you went out and raised?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say we were profitable. We are profitable, but it took us a bit to get there. And that's like one of the challenges, right? So you're always going to have this spend that you're chasing in order to become profitable. And at some point you get operating leverage and it all kind of works out, right? So a lot of people, there's one philosophy where you scale as fast as humanly possible. And that's what I was talking about, like just continue to throw gasoline on. And there's a lot of reasons to do that. In some industries, right, there's a lot of competition and you need to grow bigger, faster, stronger than everyone else if you want to be the winner. There's going to be one winner. Where we were lucky is that nobody understood what we were doing. Still, it like confuses people. So we had a really amazing head start, which allowed us to just keep our head down and focus on unit economics. So, for every dollar we spend to acquire a customer, I wanted to return 3. Having that discipline to like control the levers on how fast we were going to grow was incredibly helpful. And the only way to this day that we approve spending more to acquire a customer is if we can grow our lifetime value of a customer.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Now, I love to kind of double click into that sometimes because I've just witnessed so many people raise money when they haven't really needed to. And I have before. I've also invested for quite a while. And so I see both sides of the fence, but I also sometimes cringe. And then I have a mentor he's in private equity, but also has had plenty of exits and all the things. And he never really wants to talk about revenue. He's only focused on profit, right? And he just feels like we live in a world where that raising and that constant cycle can be romanticized. And really we forget to keep our eye on the ball.
I attribute it to, and look, I love our investors and there's a lot of wonderful VCs out there. So don't take this as more than it's a business model. Venture capital is a business. Private equity is a business. And they have returns that they promise their investors. And what they get paid for is that return, right? They also have management fees. So they want to keep marking up their investments to be able to raise that next round. It's just the business and it's okay. And it works.
Right.
But these VCs and private equity firms have hundreds of investments. I had one. For them, if you throw as much fuel on the fire and you see, who wins in the end, that works for that business model. But for me, I was like, that feels really dangerous. And it felt like something that didn't align with my values. And I always knew that, I always knew Daily Harvest was going to be big, that had the potential to be really big, right? But there were so many fits and starts and wrong turns. And I mean, this was anything but a straight line to where we are today. And if we had thrown too much fuel in the fire, I feel like it would have been more difficult to take those pivots, to make those changes, because there is something to be said for that slow and steady wins the race storyline. And, because it was my one investment, I couldn't afford to lose. I could, because I already walked through like, why not now, right? But once I was in it, I started feeling so much pressure to my investors, to my team members who quit their jobs and decided to hold hands with me to create something. And there's a lot, and I felt a lot of, accountability and pressure to make Daily Harvest successful. And that was the best way I knew how, and it still is.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. Next, you will hear a quick word from Elaine Morrison. She helps women feed their beauty from within with her collagen brand called Elaine Wellness. As a solo entrepreneur, Elaine shares the sense of community, support, and mentorship that she has gained from graduating from the Renegade Accelerator and joining the Renegade Collective. If you're wondering if the program is right for you, Elaine shares great insight into who renegades really are. And for more information, head to renegadeaccelerator.com. We are open for enrollment and we have a few seats left.
Hi, I'm Elaine Morrison, and I joined the Renegade Collective because I was looking for not only mentorship, but also community with other women entrepreneurs. And so it stood out as soon as I spoke with Amy Jo, and she was just so supportive and encouraging and really had great actionable steps for me to take because I was at a real critical point in my business. I had to rename my brand and I was completely pivoting from one product to another. So I knew that she would be the ideal mentor to really help me get through that transition. So the biggest result I got was really figuring out my brand messaging and brand identity, which is I help women feed their beauty from within. And it was a huge aha moment sitting together when I came up with that. And it really was because of all of the exercises and the deep dives that Amy Jo led us through in order for me to really boil it down to that one pivotal moment. So my biggest internal result also was just a lot of the mindset work that she had us do, which was, again, so important because I was at such a crossroads. And for me, also the friendships that I made with the other women. Those were two really, really positive results for me. Renegades write the rules because, well, that's what women do, right? Especially when we're in collective together. So I just can't say enough good things about the program. I would recommend this program to anyone who is not only looking for community, but also just so much great insight and help from Amy Jo. When you get stuck, when you're at a moment where you can't figure it out, she definitely can help you brainstorm and get to that next level. And then the alumni collective for me has just been incredible. The Slack channel, the resources, the support, the encouragement. I just am so, so grateful for it and certainly have become very close friends with some of the women from my cohort. So I encourage you to check out the community. It's growing and it's just an incredible resource on your entrepreneurial journey.
It's amazing. This is such good advice and solid. I mean, even looking at it from all points of view and understanding the business models of everyone involved. So if you have, let's say someone comes to you, they've got a company that's clipping along, they're profitable, and they want to accelerate. So they want to go raise like raise some money from strategics. What are some of the questions you ask them to kind of help them figure out if that's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think use of proceeds is the most important question. What are you going to do with the money? And if the answer is put more money into marketing, my answer is usually, is that the right thing to do? Because at a certain point, they're diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Right. At a certain point, you're acquiring the next customer less efficiently than you did the first. Yeah. So it's not that it's without a cost. And of course, the cost of capital sometimes can justify it. And, it's not that simple. But I have never been a fan of raising money to just lean into acquiring customers. I think that if you're raising money to be able to cover more geography, or to be able to fulfill faster, or to be, something operational, or, to build a part of a team that's going to create the next frontier for innovation, for scale, for structure, then I'd say absolutely all day long if that's what's choking off your growth. But I've never been a fan of raising money to acquire more customers faster. Unless, right, because there's always two sides to every story, unless you've got a competitor breathing down your neck and it's a zero-sum game. But it very rarely is actually a zero-sum game.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay, I love that. What's one thing you find yourself learning over and over?
Something that I really have, as you said, learned over and over is how I have to keep working on what my job is. It's like I settle with what my job is for a few months, and I have to really reteach myself that my job is if we continue to grow and be successful as fast as we have done, bringing on as many team members as we've brought on, my job needs to continue to evolve. And as we've gotten to the scale that we're at, I've also had to remind and make sure that my team members who are managing people are also relearning the same thing, where it's every 6 months, you've got to step out and really purposely focus on where your time is best spent, what other people can be doing probably more effectively. Mm-hmm. And I think it was first round? I think it's First Round Capital wrote an article a bunch of years ago about giving away your Legos. And I just keep going back to it, where it's in order to build a bigger tower, you've got to give away those Legos. And it's something that I relearn over and over again, because I tend to get comfortable where I am. And I'm okay, I've mastered this level, but it's something that I'm constantly forcing myself to go back to.
Amazing. That's great advice as well. And I'm going to look that up. So that's the name of the article. It's about giving away your Legos. Okay.
Something like that. It's great.
So what gets you out of bed in the morning?
What gets me out of bed in the morning is actually my children at about 5 in. But other than that,
I hear you.
I'm please, it's not light out yet. Leave me alone. But it really is about the big picture, where I say this a lot, but Hippocrates was a really smart guy, and he said, "Let food be thy medicine." And somehow we ended up with a Hippocratic oath for medicine, but not for food, which is crazy to me. If you really zoom out, right? Food is supposed to be thy medicine. Medicine's not supposed to be thy medicine. So really going back to how we can create a new food system that makes really good, clean food incredibly accessible and convenient for the way that we live, and do good at the same time by trying to reverse some of the damage that big food has done to our planet and our system and our health, is what I'm incredibly passionate about. And, we get stories that come across. We have an internal Slack channel that's customer stories that come across all day long. And they just give me so much energy.
That's cool. I love that. And what keeps you up at night then?
So much. So I would say what keeps me up at night most is, okay, wait, I'm going to share a little bit more about what gets me going in the morning.
They're probably related, right? There's probably an inverse there somewhere, but yes.
The other thing that gets me up in the morning and keeps me going is the team. like we have 200 and I think 60 now incredible humans that are so passionate about our mission.
Can you believe that? Like, do you ever stop and just think about that?
It's insane. Like literally every time we have an all hands, I look at the number and I'm like, what alternate universe am I living in? This is so crazy.
I have goosebumps for you. That's amazing.
So then what keeps me up at night is, and I actually mentioned it earlier, is this like responsibility that I feel towards not only making sure that we are feeding people and being really changing the paradigm of big food, right? That's a huge mission. And there's a lot of responsibility as part of that, but also to the team who, you know, are betting on me, are betting on the vision, are putting their name and their careers at not at risk, but like at stake for, you know, what we're trying to achieve together. And, you know, maybe this is a female thing, I don't know, but like, I just feel so much weight and responsibility. And that's really what keeps me up at night, because I also feel responsible for helping people grow in their careers and that career progression, because, you know, at a startup, having experienced one myself, there's not a lot of opportunities to like learn and to step out and to be really methodical about career development. It's really like being thrown in and drinking from the fire hose. And there's a lot of people who can thrive in that environment and learn a ton, but there are a lot of people who, you know, you need to teach, like, there's like real skills that also need to be taught that you can't learn that way. So, you know, I think a lot about it. I spend a lot of my time on that, really making sure that people are developing as subject matter experts and as, you know, in their careers as well.
And how do you invest in yourself, your own growth?
You're like, I invest in everyone else's and I'm a mom. And
oh my gosh. Have you ever been to the eye of a tornado?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, I should do it more. It's something I'm not actually great at, because I'm very much like I'm always worried about everyone else. So, you know, I'd say I invest in myself in small ways. One is, this is going to sound like a cop-out. I don't mean it to be, but like, there's a lot of pressure for work-life balance and having it all. And I honestly, like, by letting go of that and being like, you're not going to have it all at once. You can have it linearly, maybe. That is one form of like actually investing in myself, just like taking that pressure off of myself, that I also need to have this balance and this like time out, and it just doesn't exist. And I was putting so much pressure on myself for like living that way. And once I let go, I actually felt a lot less stressed out, which is kind of ironic. I also, you know, do take that time every 6 months that I mentioned and really think about where I am today, what skills I want to learn in the next 6 months, how I'm going to learn those skills, how I want to change as a leader. And I created this thing, I call it a learning roadmap, and I make everybody on my team have one. And it really is in 6 month increments. How do you want to develop your career? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? What can I help you do to get there? What's like a 6 month work, a 6 months worth of work that you can put in, so that when you look back 6 months ago, you really feel like you've progressed.
That's amazing. And perceived progress is an ingredient of happiness too. So just even it's perceived, right? So this learning roadmap, is it a document that you have internally that
everybody has one?
That's so great. I mean, talk about feeling empowered and supported in your and being groomed for wherever you want to go next. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, when I worked at Guilt, one of the amazing things that happened was some people call it like the guilt mafia. It's kind of the thing in New York. But there's so many businesses that were founded from people who worked at Guilt. And I think that is so cool. And one of my goals has always been, how do I create an environment, which sounds counterintuitive, right? Like, I don't want people to leave. We're investing in people, but like, I want to create opportunity. And I want all of these people who are incredibly talented to take something away that they can add more value to the world.
It's such a smart move, because that's going to just create more loyalty, but also attract talent and bring new in whenever, it's just a neat like life cycle for talent as well. So you also invest, and being on that side of the table, which my goal is to get more women a seat at the cap table, not just a seat at the table, right? What do you look for? Do you focus on specific industry, passions, founders that How do you have a formula?
So I don't do a ton of it. I don't have a lot of time to be sourcing deals. So most of them are people reaching out to me who, do have that time to really be in the trenches there. Mm-hmm. But what separates the businesses that I invest in and those that I don't is really one, could I be a customer? Right? I think females make 80% of the purchasing decisions, and there are not enough things out there that I feel like are designed for females by females. And so I tend to lean a little bit heavier in that direction because I think that there's definitely a gap. But, I've invested in a lot of wonderful male founded businesses as well. So, I ask myself, is this aligned with my values? Is this something I could see myself using? Is this something I think has product market fit? Is this something I think adds value to the world? But most importantly, do I believe in the founder? Because a good founder is somebody who will figure it out. They are resourceful, they're driven. And I also think that it's helpful when they don't have a huge ego.
I dig it. And I think, it's interesting to see more and more female investors, which I know we need a lot more to be able to kind of get a little bit of balance. But what I found is sometimes just even talking about it, I have for quite a while, but until I started talking about it a little bit more, that's when I really saw a lot more deal flow, of course, mainly coming from guys. And it's all coming from guys mostly. But I think that that's where, talking about it, and nobody really teaches us this per se. So sharing and bringing other women in, even if it's in smaller capacities, it's just like something I'm really excited about. So, okay, let's say we go back to the beginning and you're in that moment where you said you had all the reasons not to jump into the entrepreneurial spirit full time and do your own thing, but you did. If you could go back to that moment where you were asking yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? And you could say something, what would you say to her?
Yeah, I would just say there's never a good time. Literally never. There's always a reason not to. And if you just change your mindset from why not to why now, it can change your entire outlook and just really give you the courage and the reasons to instead of to not.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for being, a representative. Seeing is believing. So thank you for being that for so many of us. And I'm a fan. I'm excited about Daily Harvest. It's important work, and I appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom. This has just been fascinating and super valuable.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?